That's fine.
Now, you grew up in Washington, I believe?
Washington, D.C., yes, correct.
What music was first attracting your attention there?
Well, gee, as a young man, it was as a young boy, it was just about everything. You know, it's a great crossroads of cultural crossroads, of course, being the nation's capital. But at the same time, there's a crossroads of music from the continental United States that comes up through the Appalachian Mountains, and the mountain music, string music that was originally brought over and from England and Norway and France, and all that fiddle music that was brought through, and guitar music, and all that transmuted into bluegrass and a lot of American folk music. Then there's quite a bit of urban music that comes up through rhythm and blues, and when I was around 12 or 13, I'd go down to Howard Theater and see Ray Charles every night, and the rock, the rhythm and blues acts like Joe Turner and Laverne Baker, and boy, the early shows of Ike and Tina Turner and all that in the 50s, you know. But I also love classical music, so I could just take a bus on down to Constitution Hall and hear the great orchestras of the world come through there. Wow. So with all of that, and of course it was a great jazz center for a while too in the early 60s. I got to see Roland Kirk and Eric Dolphy, my favorite, and Charlie Mingus and a bunch of other people that would come up through there. And then you know, in the early 60s, for me, there was a sort of a folk blues revival on the colleges, and that's kind of where Dave Van Ronk and Bob Dylan got started, Joan Baez and all those people. But up along that route was people being brought out of that had played in the 30s and 40s, and where their music had sort of gone out of favor, and they were sort of rediscovered by various entrepreneurs like Dick Spotswood, who rediscovered Sun House and Mississippi John Hurt and all those people. So it was a great time to grow up, through those late 50s and early 60s. As you know, started out playing guitar at 12 years old, 1956.
Now you're involved in giving guitar tuition these days. Did you have formal guitar training yourself?
I had a little. I started out just kind of plucking around on a guitar that was up in the attic that my father had. My father was a dentist, but in the 20s when he had gone to school, he had played a little banjo and guitar, and I messed around with it, and then it disappeared, and it reappeared at Christmas time with a note for 12 lessons, and I started taking lessons from a big band guitar player named Harry Voorhees, and then I moved on primarily to figure out the guitar works of my youth, which were people like, you know, people that were playing with Gene Vincent and maybe Ricky Nelson, Jim Burton, those kind of people, Buddy Holly and all of that. And that's actually where I met Jorma in high school, and Jorma Kaukonen. And we actually had a small high school band in 1958 together, 59.
What was it that first attracted you to bass?
I beg your pardon?
What was it that first attracted you to the bass guitar?
The bass guitar, I started playing guitar naturally, and what attracted me to the bass guitar was just a kind of a fluke. A friend of mine that I did a number of shows with, we sort of competed guitar, named Danny Gatton, and he's a wonderful guitar player who's no longer with us now. And I believe he was the one that asked me to fill in bass, because we knew each other. Of course, it was a small community there, and we were all about 16 years old, 17, and I filled in bass for a bass player that was sick at the time. My work quota increased dramatically when I started doing that, but that year, I think I started falling in love with the bass and what it could do. I really liked the tonal aspects of it, and I got myself a 1961 jazz bass, which was the year I started playing, I think. And so I was playing guitar and bass, and I just really liked the tone of the bass and what it could do, and the kind of power it had in the band to shape the music.
Were there any?
There was a big departure from the stand-up bass that was in a lot of all the early rock and roll stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So when you had people later on like James Jamerson and Duck Dunn with Stax Volt and James Jamerson up in Motown, you know, it really literally changed the face of rock and roll, and it gave it a power that and an ability to play more syncopated lines and melodic lines, you know, that you just didn't hear with the stand-up bass. It was a bass guitar, is what it was, as opposed to a bass violin.
They would have been the first bass players that really grabbed your attention?
Well, actually, most of the bass players that I liked were jazz bass players. But one of the first ones I really liked was the guy that played, and I don't know his name right now, but the guy that played with the early bands with James Brown. And I would go down to Howard Theater and hear those guys and hear how powerful and funky that bass was. I didn't really lean towards playing, you know, I didn't try to emulate those kinds of styles, but I really appreciated what they were doing with it.
Now, what were your first impressions of the scene in San Francisco when you arrived there? Did you have a preconceived notion what to expect when you got there?
No, I had no notion. Actually, that was quite a few years later when I was about 21 and I was going to college and just kind of hanging in there, you know, playing on weekends and club bands and things like that, but nothing original. And actually, it was quite depressing. At that time in 1964, 65, it was kind of, I wasn't very inspired with that end of the music. So I started studying a little more classical music and studying some other music in school. And I hooked up with a friend, Jorma Kaukonen again, and he said who'd really concentrated on finger-picking Piedmont-style blues playing acoustic guitar. And I kind of stayed in the rhythm and blues field, electric field. And I found out one night as we were chatting away, he was out in California, I was still in D.C., that he had joined this folk rock band called Jefferson Airplane. And I laughed at the name, and he said that the bass player wasn't working out, and I had mentioned that I was playing bass. He said, gee, I didn't know you were playing bass. I thought you played guitar. So I said, yeah, I've been playing bass for years. So he says, I'll call you back. And he called back, and he says, listen, I got this manager who promises to pay us $50 a week whether we work or not. How about coming out to California? I said, you're on. So I dropped out of school in September 1965. I flew out in October, and we played our first show together a few days later.
Now, I believe
with a group, and to really answer your question, I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And when I got there, I found I was rather shocked because I guess they were rather shocked at me. I was, you know, had this sort of nerdy college look, you know, and the folk look, and they were starting to get that kind of California long-haired birds look, you know, and what I noticed right away was practically no one was what you call a professional musician, and I'd been used to bands that rehearsed a lot and had 3 saxes in them, and you know, different colored plaid tuxedos every night, you know, and you know, we did things like, you know, you went on 40 minutes, you went off 20 minutes, you did 5 sets a night and all of that club work, you know, and these people all came from different backgrounds, you know. Paul Kantner with a sort of a Weaver's folk background, and Jorma with a Piedmont blues, and Reverend Gary Davis, you know, background in his playing, and Marty Ballin had a couple of pop records out in the early '60s, you know, that were produced in Los Angeles, and everybody's from a different background, but that was the secret, I think, to the eclectic sound of the Jefferson Airplane, and it afforded me the opportunity to write all new material, write all all new bass parts, have all the music, most of the music be original, and everybody work to get an original sound, and that's really where I was able to fulfill, a desire to find my own voice on the instrument.
Now, as Jorma recruited you to the band, is it true that you were the one that was primarily responsible for bringing Grace Slick to the band?
Yeah, but that was quite a bit later.
Yeah.
That was we had put out one album with Signe Anderson as the lead singer. Not as much lead singer as part of a group singer. And Grace was singing in another band. And but the short answer is yes. I asked her to join the band. When Signe was announced that she wanted to leave to be a full-time mom. And so we looked for another singer, and she was the obvious choice. She had a completely different personality than Signe, a lot more aggressive. I really pushed for that because she had a personality and a uniqueness to the voice, and that wasn't trying to necessarily blend in. She wasn't really used to playing and singing as a vocal harmony, like with three-part harmonies that Paul really enjoyed. I really liked the individual aspect to the quality of her voice and the aggressive stance she had. So that was unusual in a female there in those days, where most of them tried to kind of look the part with long hair and be nice and sit on a stool and smile a lot.
Looking back now, how do you think you coped with the stardom and notoriety that came? I
think I coped with it.
Yeah. Did you handle stardom okay?
Well, first of all, you're all young, so you handle however you handle things when you're young. And looking back on it, some of it you did okay, and some of it you didn't do very well. So, it's a balance. In general, I like to think, I tried to do, handle it the best I could. Like I say, we were given opportunities a lot of people weren't given, and I guess in retrospect, sometimes they were wasted, and sometimes we really took advantage of them. So like anything, you can always look back on something and wish you hadn't done something, but there's quite a bit that I'm glad that we did.
During your time with the band, can you pinpoint an album or a moment in time where you think the band really came of age and I guess became the band that you always hoped it would be?
Well, the band was, because we were young and learning our instruments, the sounds and levels of playing changed dramatically from album to album. And so I was just, as a matter of fact, RCA just put together and re-released the first 4 albums that we did, and they sent it to me a few weeks ago. And there was extra outtakes and other things on it, to make it more, intriguing for people, And I hadn't listened to any of that stuff in 30 years at least, and I started listening to those albums in a series, and I got up. Let's see, I think it was first 4 albums. There was Jefferson Airplane Takes Off, It's a Realistic Pillow, and then After Bathing at Baxter's was probably the breakaway album for us, because with the success of Surrealistic Pillow, we were able to then, instead of spend 2 weeks in the studio, we could spend 3 months in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's both good and bad, but but we were able to. What was great for me was I was able to get in a studio atmosphere and really learn about the way my bass sounded, the way I was playing, the way I thought I was playing, and the way it really sounded, and back on tape, and start to deal with that aspect of my personal aspect of the approach to the instrument and the nuts and bolts of the way I play. And so when I listened back to all that stuff, I expected to be really horrified by a lot of, bad technique or whatever, and the kind of things that only musicians hear a lot. And actually I was quite pleased with it and intrigued by how complicated we made a simple song, So it was really interesting. I had just done that a couple of weeks ago. I had a drive of about 500 miles from San Francisco, from Los Angeles, where I live, up to San Francisco to do a 3-day project up there. And So I listened to a couple along the way, and it was a lot of fun. And but to get back to your question, I think that was a breakaway period where we really started to develop our own sound about the third album. And although you can hear it all developing, and then it certainly got into that part by the time we got to Crown of Creation.
On to Hot Tuna. Was there something you wanted to achieve there when you formed that outfit? Something that you were looking to experience with that band that you were not getting from the Airplane?
Well, yes. What was then happening with Airplane was that basically quite often along that period of time, the late 60s, there was a certain amount of downtime and a certain amount of time that many of the members wanted to stay in San Francisco and not tour, so that left a lot of open time for Jorma and I. And what we would do would be to work out many of the tunes that he'd worked out as a solo guitar player, with a finger-picking solo guitar player. We'd work out a lot of the Reverend Gary Davis songs and a few others, and that sort of led Jorma into writing a lot, starting to write a lot of material, and we'd play it as a duo, just in hotel rooms, and work out arrangements. And finally we started kind of like opening to ourselves in the Jefferson Airplane, and then adding a drummer. And we tried various combinations out. I think we were just kind of feeling the waters about what we wanted to do, and it gave us an opportunity to play material that just did Hot Tuna, and moved on from there,
Did it eventually reach a point in time that you found yourself becoming torn between the two
Well, there's
groups?
only so many hours in the day.
Yeah.
And I think by the when the 60s were over, and there was I think by the time we broke away from the Jefferson Airplane, or the Jefferson Airplane couldn't be the Jefferson Airplane without us, so we decided to kind of pull the plug on it in 1972. And everybody's working on different projects. I think Paul had been working on a project, and we had worked on Hot Tuna, and it just naturally sort of split off, and there's only so many things you can do. And so we started in earnest around 72 on that.
Probably maybe not a fair question to ask you, but did you remain a fan of Jefferson Airplane's Jefferson Starship as they became?
A fan of Jefferson Starship?
Yeah.
Well, the Jefferson Airplane isn't the Jefferson Airplane unless it's all the original guys.
Of course.
And girls. So
yeah.
that's how that worked out. And then Paul, I think Paul asked us later on, he said, would you mind if I use the word Jefferson for Jefferson Starship? We said, fine, go ahead. And so I think for them it was great. They really got to move in an area that perhaps we had impeded them. Marty really liked the romantic ballad and the love song, and I think they were able to kind of work in a direction that they enjoyed more. Because they achieved more pop success in the '80s than we ever did as the Jefferson Airplane.
Yeah.
And so I think they were happy at that, and we were happy with a little more of a blues influence.
Sure. Now, you're doing some work in the acoustic duo format again with Jorma these days. Did you really feel a strong pull towards getting back to that format?
You mean recently?
Yeah.
Yes. First of all, I mean it's the easiest thing to do in a sense for us, but it's also the way I think we sound the most unique. I mean, there's a lot of electric bands out there. There's a lot of people that play electric music really well, but there's not as many that can sit down with a bass and a guitar and kind of shape the sounds like we do. And particularly with his style of playing, with the finger-picking style of playing, it really opens up the bass world to me, so that it's not a typical accompaniment where there's a strumming guitar keeping rhythm and then a bass keeping rhythm along with that to back up a vocal. There's a lot more interplay and counterpoint between us, and so it makes an interesting format, and has been so much fun and musically very interesting to us.
You've been doing some teaching at his guitar camp as well, which I believe is a wonderful facility. How beneficial is to you the teaching experience in terms of keeping your own skills sharp and learning new things yourself?
Well, that's exactly what happens. When somebody asks you how you do something, you have to sit down and think how you do it, why you do it, and then explain it. And so this is the 6th year, and we just finished up the 6th year yesterday, and it's been really an amazing experience. Now the facilities out here, it's in southeast Ohio. There's a couple hundred acres, and people come from all over the world to spend a long weekend, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and a wrap up on Monday morning to just immerse themselves in music. So for my bass student, it's wonderful. Like I take usually no more than 10 or less bass students at a time and do it in a workshop format. And then there's generally 2 to 3 other instructors. For instance, this weekend there was G.E. Smith, who was teaching electric guitar. And G.E. Smith, of course, did the Saturday Night Live band for years and did a lot of work with Bob Dylan and all kinds of people. He's just a master at the Fender Telecaster guitar. And a wonderful guy to boot. And then we had Robert Jones, the blues singer and player, who was doing a blues class. He was just phenomenal. He's now the Reverend Robert Jones. And then Jorma taught a class as well. So for my bass students, I said, now here's an opportunity. There's about 30 guys up there that play guitar that you can learn from. You can learn songs from. You can learn the art of playing bass with. You have an opportunity all weekend to gather names and see if there's some people that live near you and find people to play with, and for the guitar players likewise. So it's a great format. There's a Saturday night show. There's a new venue, a 280-seat venue now, a theater that has been built last year. That's also used in Sunday afternoons for student performances to get them used, particularly the ones that have just played in their bedroom, get them used to performing in front of people, and get them out. And, it's not just music isn't just for professionals who plan to make or try to make a full living at it. It's for everybody, and it used to be in everyone's home before TV, There was always a piano, or there's always a guitar and a violin or an instrument. And that's what held families together. They sang together, And I think that tradition, we try to keep alive some of that tradition. It's a great American tradition, and it's a tradition worldwide, and with the advance of all the distractions, in families, and the families being sort of pulled apart so easily. It's a good thing to bring people together.
Now, you're also helping up-and-coming musicians through your website, too, which is more than just a fan information site. You provide a service for musicians there as well?
Well, I try to give them some information and answer questions and talk about things. I mean, there's really no... I try to take some of the mystery out of it, and for those musicians that want to figure out how to get started. I mean, there's no kind of advice that I can give about what to do with your record or whether you're going to get somebody to play it or whatnot. But I think the primary advice that I give out to musicians is to try to keep at their craft and stay true to it, and no matter what, enjoy it. It's something. Well, you'll find your own voice, and you can find your own peace and serenity through it.
Now, I want to talk about your solo album. I must confess, I haven't heard it all. I have heard pieces of it, and finally an album under your own name. Have you never felt the need to do that in the past?
Well, after I finally did it, I thought to myself, why did I wait so long to do this? But I finally did do it, and I'm real happy with it. And I had a variety of people come in to play on the sessions with me. A really great bunch of people, and primarily I wanted to work on my songwriting on it, and I wrote 10 out of the 11 songs, and I collaborated with different people. I wrote the music and gave some ideas for the lyrics, and had different people come in to do the singing. And it was a great opportunity to me to get out a variety of kinds of approaches that I've learned over the years to music, and get it all under one roof in a record.
So it's actually the type of project you've envisaged doing for a long time with various singers and all that?
Well, I haven't been doing it for a long time. I had collected music for a couple of years, and then as the project came into actual fruition, then I got it really down to work, and we recorded it. I think the total recording time is about, the total time to do the album is about 38 days, and I think we recorded for about 20 days out of that. Now, I was able to do that because I also built a studio in a large room in my home, and today that's the great news about modern technology. What used to cost a few $1 million in a studio sound-wise 20 years ago, you can get for a reasonable amount of money now with the art of the digital recording equipment.
Yeah.
And I think if you do careful recording, you use mic placement well, and everybody play. I mean, we recorded everything with basic tracks with a band playing, at least 4 pieces playing, rather than do it all on a step-by-step process. And I really enjoyed working with Ivan Neville, who was just wonderful, and Doyle Bramhall too, the second, and Jorma came in and did some work, and Warren Haynes came in and did some work. My rhythm pals, Steve Gorman from Black Crowes came in and did a bunch of work with me, and Matt Abbs from Government Mule, that I had met a couple of years earlier doing a Government Mule project with Warren Haynes, came in and did the majority of the work on drums, and we just had a ball.
It appears to be a very diverse album, not only recording with many different people, but also in many various styles as well. That must have been an exciting process.
Yeah, 2 of the guys that I met, Jim Brunberg and Jeff Pearson, I had worked with them on a project, producing a project a couple of years earlier, and they have a band called Box Set, or they're known as a Box Set Duo. And what was really nice about working with them is their willingness to work on a variety of songs, and that I would present them and work on lyrics with me. And they work great harmonies together, but at the same time, they each have an individual voice that I wanted to bring out on the album. So we've even done some shows together after that album, just as a trio, just with Jim and Jeff and myself. And it's worked out really nice.
It is a fantastic guest list of musicians on the albums. Did you have specific jobs in mind for specific people, or did the roles just sort of fall into place?
Well, a little of both. You never know how the monster is going to grow once it's let out of the box. So, I would. The great thing about that is maybe you put a song together and you do it yourself, and you get a general idea, and then when you start bringing the real humans into the picture, then you have the interplay that goes on between it that sparks other ideas, and then the songs take different shapes. And so that's the great surprise about it, and you never quite know exactly what the road is going to be, as it moves around. So Paul Barrere came in to do some of the 3 songs, and I wrote this blues song that he had, Dead Letter Box, that he did the lyrics to, and it just came out perfect, and just what I wanted. And Doyle Bramhall was there to do the lead work, and it was just a fun experience. Then there was a couple other songs. One song the producer Greg Hampton brought in a song called Paradise, and he suggested Paul for that. And that's how I met Paul, because although our paths had crossed before, we hadn't spent any time together. So Paul, with his good slide guitar and vocal, we did 3 songs that way. You know, and I brought in Jim and Jeff from a session that I had worked with, that we worked on about 5 songs with, and things grew out of that. You know.
What are the distribution plans internationally for the record? Is it just available in the States at the moment? I
certainly hope it gets to you. I hope that this phone conversation has something to do with that. Well, one would like.
But if not, there's always the internet, I guess.
Well, there is. You know, You can get it on Amazon.com. But you know, there's so much stuff. There's so much material. So many musicians playing now. I've dealt with some of the opposite. One of your countrymen, Jeff Atchison, comes out here to teach and play, and we've talked about that too. You know, it's great for him to get up here and play. He comes up and teaches it at Jorma Kaukonen's for a piece ranch here, and then tries to book together and book shows. You know, coming out of those trips here to get to the States. Jorma and I were talking yesterday about coming out to Australia. He may come out there as a solo first soon to check the waters, and then he and I may come out there later on.
That's
I've
fantastic.
certainly got a bunch of friends in Australia, so I'd like to come out and pay him a visit, you know.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I believe Jorma is planning to hit our blues festivals in the early part of next year, which would be great, yeah. Outside of Jefferson Airplane and Hot Tuna, what would be some of your other proudest moments in music?
Oh, you know, there's been a number. I did some work with David Crosby that I was really happy with a long time ago, and there was a period of time when we were all playing on everybody else's record, and that was so much fun. I did a session with Jimi Hendrix on Electric Ladyland, and did a Voodoo Child with him, and that was great, you know, and Jimmy and I and Mitch Mitchell had done a lot of banging around the Fillmore Auditorium when we were all hanging out there. And so there's a variety of things throughout the career. Like I say, there's I have to say, doing this last album, the Dream Factor album of mine, I was really proud of that, because I was able to kind of see and direct how the songs would go and have them actually come to fruition. So I was real happy with that. So I pretty much live in the moment, but you know, there's a lot of the music that I'm proud of that we did in the past, and I think I've gone through periods of time where I haven't wanted to hear any of it. You know, you don't, as a musician, you don't want to live in the past, but like I say, listening to a lot of that Jefferson Airplane stuff, at least the first 4 albums, you know, I had to turn around and say, yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Cool. And just to finish up, Jack, what's on your books for the next, for the upcoming year or so? What are your plans?
This afternoon, Jorma and I just finished the teaching session here this weekend. Then we have a bus come and pick us up, and then we go basically on tour for 4 months. Acoustic Hot Tuna. We'll have Barry Mitterhoff on mandolin with us, and we'll do a little over a month break for Christmas, and then we'll do January and February as well.
Fantastic. Okay, Jack, well, thanks for your time. Thanks for catching up with me this early hour for you over there.
Oh, it's fine. I'm an early riser.
Oh, good.
The older you get, the earlier you get up.
And we'll certainly round up the trips to make sure Jorma's trip down here is a big success in the new year, which will inspire him to bring you back next time around. We'd love to see you both down here together.
That'd be terrific. Okay?
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Jack.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you down here soon, let's hope.
Okay.
Bye-bye.